Hi, Jen.
Hi there.
So hi, my name is Hiva.
Hello.
I'm Rachel.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi, my name is Julia again.
Hi, Julia.
Nice to meet you.
Again, nice to meet you, Julia. Again. Steve Matteucci.
Awesome. And what do you do?
Here at school, I am the wrestling coach and an assistant football coach. Out there, I'm a truck driver. That's what pays bills. But so I'm an off-campus coach. I work elsewhere, and there's a few of us on campus that are like that.
Okay. And your passion is coaching?
Yes, it always has been. Yes, it
And
doesn't really matter the sport.
when
So-
did you discover that that was what you wanted to do?
Well, even when I was in high school playing, or younger, when I was even a little kid, I always liked to organize, be the captain, pick teams, make the rules, And high school, I was a captain and always, took it upon myself to have kids, follow me. And then probably in my early 20s, when I started playing softball with friends, beer league softball things, I was always kind of the coach or manager of the team to get everything organized. So I've always done it.
Did you take a lot of risks to be where you are? Like,
Did anyone
describe
Yes,
the
and
obstacles.
well, there weren't really obstacles, just more things that life has lots of bumps, and I was able to overcome those bumps because of my passion for coaching. If it was something I wasn't passionate about, there would have been many reasons over the years that I could have stopped,
You have
but I
regrets?
didn't. No. None.
And what
That's
was
what I
that
love doing.
force that made you don't that made you not want to stop? Is it your passion?
Yeah, it's very. I always tell my kids I coach like I parent, so I always think that I was meant to be a parent. I was a very young one, My son was born when I was still very young, but we never had any doubts. My wife and I both thought of being parents was fun. Our friends would complain about it. We loved it.
Yeah.
And so coaching's kind of the same thing. When it gets tough or things aren't going the way I would like them to be going, then there's always that, now there's always that freshman that comes in and changes it. Now I gotta be here to see when that kid really gets it. And, so that kind of gets you through the rough parts.
So with you coaching wrestling and football or any other sport that you coach, is there like a certain age group that you like working with, or are you
That I prefer working with? It's really hard to say. Probably high school, because it can be much more intense. At the high school level, it can be, frost off and it's still kind of having fun. Or I could take those same kids to the national level and compete at a national level, the best in the whole world even. And I work with kids that do that. I go to the Olympic Training Center with a friend of mine, and so you can't really do that with younger kids. It's still more instructional and way less intense. So I would say, because I really enjoy that feeling. The kids get nervous when they're performing, but that feeling of, and that's what I always tell them, when they get all mad when they lose, well, that's why it feels so good to win. But that feeling, I still get those butterflies. But I enjoy those butterflies. It's boring to me if I'm not excited about it.
So, is there you guys have your little prep talks before your wrestling match or your games? What do you usually tell your players to pump them up?
I usually it's never really right before the match. It's every day. And I try to get them to believe I want them to feel my passion, so they're passionate about it themselves. And when that happens, then the whole process becomes more fun. And even though we're being way more intense about it, they're having more fun because they're achieving so much. And that doesn't really go with age group either. You know, I coach little kindergartners, you know, in middle school and elementary school, and it's the same thing. You know, you see them one day and they don't really have it figured out, and then the next day they do have it figured out, and you see how happy they are.
It's the accomplishment.
The accomplishment, yeah. I always tell my kids that I get to be there when that little light goes off. You may struggle forever, years, not being able to figure something out. But that one thing, it's not always doing it exactly right. It's just something very minimal. But I can see that little light bulb goes off, and you can figure it out.
Is there anything else you ever wanted to do, like when you were younger?
Well, I always wanted to play. That's why. Yeah, but I mean, when I say play, it's because I couldn't pick a sport. You know, I always played baseball, basketball, football. Always thought I would be a football player. And
was there doubtful people around you?
yeah. There's people always doubt, and I didn't know it at the time, but I kind of followed this advice, and I've heard a lot of successful people since then give it as advice. Just don't listen to people that say you can't. You know, you want to focus on the people that tell you you can do it and how. In anything. You know, usually the people that say you can't just are afraid to try themselves. And back to your question about, you know, pep talks, that's the kind of stuff I just reassure them of that every day. So when it comes time for that moment before the big match, hey guys, just do what we've been doing all week. You know, it doesn't need to be that big moment. Some do, some don't. You know, but that's what I like to do during the week. Is that's when the real motivation comes, because that's when it's tough. You know, that's when you're doing the hard work and you're tired and have homework and you don't really want to be there. You know?
And throughout high school and college, did you ever doubt yourself and say that you couldn't do it? Did you follow a path in playing football?
Well, I actually got hurt my senior year, and it was a very severe injury, and I was told by doctors, the one person that you have to listen to when they say you can't, I had doctors telling me that I couldn't, and I didn't believe them, so I continued to work out, like some people I know, and so I continued to work out and was, you know, anticipating. I was checking off the calendar. You know, they said broken bones heal in 6 weeks, so I'll be back in 6 weeks. Well, then it was 8 weeks, and it was 10 weeks. So then football season was over, and I just went to wrestling practice because in my mind I got hurt playing football, not hurt wrestling. So yeah, I can wrestle now, and I still was hurt. So I was, you know. But I never really had anybody telling me I couldn't do something as far as just being an obstacle. Yeah. I mean, I physically couldn't do something. But even then, I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe it. You know, I continued on. And that's probably why I'm a coach, because I couldn't continue to play.
So.
And this is my way of being part of it still.
So, is there anything that you personally would do differently to like get to where you are at today, or would you still like take the path that you took?
No, there's always things that, you know, it's easy to look back and want to change, but my path that got me here was coaching my son. That's how I ended up here. So I was at his practices watching for most sports, and then very soon, a within a few days, I would be coming home and explaining to my wife that I was now the coach of that team. So when he came up here to South City, I was just hanging around watching football, and I asked if I could help in wrestling, and they actually needed an assistant coach. So I got very lucky, and they let me work out with my son, which is what I wanted to do, and I actually got to start coaching wrestling, which at that time I really didn't know. I've done a lot of study since then, so I know a great deal more about the sport now. But as far as the coaching part of it, I didn't really know I wanted to be a wrestling coach until I was one. And it was probably my son's senior year when I was discussing it with the head coach on whether or not I'd be here the next year. And he seemed a little surprised, and that's when that was really the only decision I ever made, was at that point, okay, you know what, I want to do this. And so I was an assistant for about 4 years before I actually became the head coach. And by then I had started coaching football with Coach Morrow. I'd been coaching for about 2 years with him.
And was that a tough decision to make? Like, were you at a job at that point?
I've always been very lucky. Now, on the downside, career-wise, I could have made a lot more money if I didn't coach, because I could be working. But I've been very lucky that I've had jobs over the past 20 years that I could keep I could take care of my family, and I still had the time to coach. I mean, it's a true blessing.
What were you doing before you were coaching?
I've always driven a truck. I've been driving a truck since my son was born. So just depending on where I was, when I started coaching him, in kindergarten even, I was at a job that I was off by 2 o'clock. I started early. So I was off at 2 o'clock. He got out of school at the same time. So it's like having teacher's hours, I was able to go to practice. And then about 15 years ago, I switched jobs, but it was my boss was very cooperative as far as allowing me any time I needed. So I've been very lucky over the years that I've had a job that allowed me to do it, because that's a real problem. I've lost many great assistant coaches over the years because they didn't have the time. Their job wouldn't allow them to get to school. That's why it's so much better for teachers to be coaches, because their schedule revolves around the student athletes that they're coaching. So.
Was there some kind of training you had to do in order to become a coach, or was it just...
It's something that I do kind of naturally, but I've always had to learn.
New things?
I'm constantly learning. I mean, I spend my days now with a colleague, and I should say friend, but I say colleague because we're trying to be important here. Every day I learn from him, and when I show up to practice, this is for elementary and junior high kids, okay? So we've got 10 years old to 13 years old in the room. And there's 2 big screens with videos of old wrestling matches going on. There's, yesterday we did a whole thing, again, with young kids. We did our mental toughness and mental preparedness, talking about anxiety, and, and these are all things that you learn every time you teach somebody else. You're learning also, because I could try to teach you something, you don't get it, and maybe I taught it to you last year, and I needed to do something a little different with you. Oh wait, I'll try it this way, and you get it again. So I'm always learning how to communicate with kids, and learning new techniques is always important also.
Is coaching difficult for you, or does it just come like...
It's very, very natural. It's very difficult to do, but it's, again, because I'm passionate about it, and it's very easy at the same time.
Are there times where you hate it?
I never would say hate it. Never.
You're struggling.
Are there times
There's
you
lots
want
of
to
times, I wouldn't say quit. I'm at a point in my life right now where I don't really want to be the head guy. I like being an assistant, mainly because it is a lot of responsibility, and it does take a great deal of time. So that is the downside of it. But if it also is the same thing, if it meant I couldn't coach anymore, then I wouldn't make that decision. So it's way worth it to me. Definitely worth it.
Is there any lasting advice you'd like to give us? Seeing that we're sophomores and we're still trying to find out what we want to do.
Well, most important thing is always try to find something that you're passionate about. Life will be so much easier. And you got to be realistic, though. You can't just say, I love butterflies, so I'm going to go chase butterflies, right? Well, but maybe you could be an entomologist. Maybe you could be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So find something that you really like, and then try to focus on how do I make myself, how can I do this the rest of my life? So passion first. And then the other thing would be, you can always be better. Always.
Keep striving to do more.
Always. No matter how good and you can feel great about what you just accomplished.
Yeah.
But just remember, if you just did it, you could do better. Because what you just did, you didn't really think you could do before you did it. You know, if it was worthwhile to you, it was a struggle. And there was lots of times during that struggle you didn't think you could do it, but you can. So never be satisfied. So always, always think, okay, I did this, and take time to enjoy it. And you may just continue to whatever that is, but always look to improve upon it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good? All right.
Yeah.
That was really inspiring.
That was
Oh,
good.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
it
like,
was,
you
yeah.
know something? He's gonna give us so much advice.
Well, it's that goes back to your question. It's what I do every day. Some listen, some don't. But as long as they keep smiling, it don't matter.
Okay.
Come on, guys.
Do you want
Oh.
to teach
You
your
could just
kids
sit
too?
down.
Sure, I'm staying here.
Okay.
Here we go.
Look over.
Good,
Bigger
yeah.
than us.
That's all right, I'll get behind you guys.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
We're gonna try to focus on our faces. You can touch the screen.
Can't move while you're doing it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's for me?